All right, and we're finally live for episode 13 of
Yeah.
the Women's Cricket Podcast, where we talk about all things women's cricket. Like always, we've got Neha joining us, and we've got a special guest today. It is Janani who is joining us. Interestingly, a Tamilian who supports RCB. Never thought those two bench circles joining or intersecting rather. Speaking of which, you guys please do check out her handles on Twitter and
Yeah, this way.
Instagram. There is Sportsy Matsy Tales. Hope I'm getting the pronunciation right. And hello, Janani. Welcome to our podcast. How have you been? And importantly, how's the WPL been treating you?
Hey, first of all, thanks Akshay, thanks Neha. Big fan of the podcast. So super excited to be here and obviously super excited to have this discussion. I've been great. Thank you so much. WPL has been also wonderful. Looking forward to the conversations and just putting it out there. A lot of Tamilians do support RCB. It's just that sometimes when it's IPL, the bleeding yellow and red/black becomes a tad. I mean, everyone loves Virat and ABD. Let's not forget that from an IPL perspective. And who doesn't like RCB, Pez, Smriti, Richa? So yeah.
I feel I found my clickbaity clip from this episode. Neha, अभी कुछ बात करने की जरूरत नहीं है. We can just put it out saying, Tamilian says they like RCB. I mean, Chennai likes RCB. That'd be fun to definitely hear.
Okay, I'm just going to take half a minute to promote myself, my Sportsy Matsy Tales. I have a series called Pez is Pez, which is all about Pez. So, Venn diagrams and Pez. So, yeah, my love is out there for the world to see.
No worries. I completely agree with you on that. I've seen it firsthand. So again, you don't need to promote it. I will also make sure I keep promoting it. Speaking of promotions, of course, before we get into the chat, पहले 2.5-3 मिनट में सब कुछ plug in कर ही लेते हैं since we are at it. Guys, we are stopping around a Google form right now. It's more of a questionnaire of sorts, just to take some feedback from all of you folks about the podcast, what you've liked about it, what you've disliked about it, anything you want us to change, anything you want us to include, exclude, all of that. So please, please, please do us a world of good. After the episode, just check this form out. We will put it up in the chat. There you go. So please make sure it's also in the description. So for all you folks joining in later, please make sure you open this form. It's all anonymized, so none of your names will be out. You can say Akshay is the worst person I've ever heard speak on men's cricket. That'll be perfectly fine. Please, just 2 minutes of your time and help us out with that. अरे बोलना पड़ता है सच्ची तो at the end of the day मानना पड़ेगा उसमें गलत तो है नहीं तो ठीक है. But anyways, jokes apart, banter apart, coming to what we've seen in week 3 of the WPL, let's start off with arguably what is, the biggest elephant in the room, so to say. Neha, we all know what we're referring to here. It is that whole dependency on toss, yaar. 14 games done, 12 by the team chasing. If you remove the last game that happened in Lucknow, because we're still not sure how the surface plays there, 12 out of the first 13 games played in Vadodara and Bangalore were won by the team chasing. What have you made of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has to be a massive talking point because a lot of conversations that I'd had with, folks have, brought in this point. Yeah, toss, why is it, becoming such a defining factor in, kind of narrating where the match is sort of headed. But again, I wouldn't look too deeply into it. I mean, as an RCB fan, तो मतलब दिल से बहुत बुरा लग रहा है after losing all those tosses, coming into bat first and being unable to defend. But then it's unfortunate that the toss plays such an important role in, kind of skewing the match entirely in the favor of, the team chasing. I hope that wasn't the case. But I think a lot also kind of, boils down to the kind of surfaces that are on offer. And मतलब इतना heavily skewed है तो अब क्या ही कर सकते हैं. But then I hope this trend kind of changes as we, enter the new leg, which is at Lucknow and eventually Mumbai as well. And the run chases, right? The kind of run chases that most of the teams have pulled off has been spectacular. I mean, Gujarat's win has given them such a morale-boosting win and a massive net run rate boost, right? So in that sense, they would definitely take a lot from that performance as well. So yeah, just not entirely happy that the toss is dictating how the result is also kind of coming out. But yeah, I think that's how it is right now.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you cannot not, agree with the fact that toss has been has played a very crucial role, to say the least. But Janani, what have you made of it so far? Yeah, like standards and all have seemed to have improved, but on the other hand, it sort of takes a bit of the sheen away from the tournament, right? When you see things like these being discussed a lot more than those on-field performances.
I mean, obviously, like you said, no one cannot not agree that the toss has been what it is. But I think it's also a part of how the game, women's game per se, and the tournament would evolve. Like I think, not to draw direct comparisons, but whether it was the IPL or other leagues in the men's league, when toss did play an important role, captain started thinking more strategically. Do I get in the, obviously spinners can't grip the ball, then we'll get medium pacers and stuff like that. So then I think my feeling is that as the game evolves in the next season, even if the toss is there, people will try and take it out of the equation by strategizing for it. So we would be seeing even more evolution of the women's cricket is what I would. That's my take from it. Optimistic take, but yes, that is what it is.
I mean, that is interesting. Of course, there is merit in that argument that, women's cricket is yet to evolve the way men's cricket has. They are, you can say lagging behind by say 10 years or so roughly. I mean, again, ऐसे ही number डालना objectively जाके फिर don't ask me or, hold me to it. But point being, there is a bit of that lag, something even cricketers themselves have admitted to. But even then, despite that, you would imagine that, there's been no dew. Let's take Bangalore, for example. Dew is usually the most commonly cited reason for something like this. Second innings, dew aa jata hai, so batting becomes easier, bowling becomes harder, like you mentioned, Janani. But specifically talking about the Bangalore leg, dew wasn't even that big a reason. Despite that, you saw batting team struggle in the first innings, or the teams chasing found it very easy to bat. So do you also think it's probably got to do with the skill set as well, that, teams defending probably don't have the necessary skills, or probably aren't so well accustomed to, handle that pressure?
I don't know, Akshay. I mean, if you look at the earlier WPLs, it was not as cute, right? Like we didn't talk about toss so much, so it's probably not a skill from that perspective. I don't think it's about the skill of defense. But having said that, there is a little bit of merit. Is it also like people have been talking about toss playing such a role, that is everyone also mentally getting a little bogged down by it? Like, just to quote Meg Lanning as a rule, one of the most popular quotes of hers was, when she loses her toss, she'll say, I don't care what I'm going to do anyway, kind of a thing. But then the last match with RCB, she actually had a fist pump and people were commenting. I mean, even the broadcasters were commenting about it. Like, it was so visible. So is it also a mental thing? And I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's about the skill, but it's probably a mix of multiple things happening. What are your thoughts there, Neha?
Yeah, I think a similar sentiment there, because most of the times when you just turn on the telly, to watch this, to watch any match, the team batting first is clearly just struggling so much. You then end up, attributing adjectives like, oh, it's such a sluggish pitch, it's such a slow pitch, like kuch ho hi nahi raha hai, power play is so boring to watch and all of that. And then the teams who are coming and chasing are just doing like absolute magic, having amazing power plays. They have one player who really sticks it out. I think Delhi, man, we should definitely take a leaf out of their book, the way they construct their run chase, right? They usually have someone like a Meg Lanning who's kind of batting it out there. Then you have others, come in and do the acceleration job. A little bit does happen, follow wickets here and there, but that doesn't really affect the outcome as much. But yeah, Janani, I think similar thoughts, with what you had to say.
I mean, it is interesting, right? Like, even if you look at the numbers and how, batting sides have fared in the first innings compared to the second, batting sides on an average have, done much better in the second innings, like we've been alluding to in the first part of the podcast. But to put some numbers to it, the average of batters in the first innings has been 20, literally 20 to the dot. And it goes up by 50% to 30 runs per wicket in the second innings. 50%, that's not a joke. And even when you talk about the ability to take wickets, bowlers have been taking wickets every 21 deliveries in the second innings. And the number drops by nearly 30% to 15 balls per wicket in the first innings. So this goes on to show that there's been a very, very clear delta between the two. It's always existed. No one's denying that. It's just that this time around, the delta has been very exaggerated, which is why, these conversations are happening. So it probably could be down to the surface. It could be down to a bit of dew. It could be anything else. It could be probably fielding under lights, bowling under lights, all of those things. So again, hard to point out one reason. There are a bunch of reasons to this, which is why we're also sort of disappointed in some sense that the conversation has been a lot more around this. And it, again, like I said, no one likes watching a game knowing कि यार 7 बजे को टॉस हुआ पता अभी ठीक है ये टीम ही शायद जीतेगी. So no one likes that. Everyone wants to see an evenly contested game. And especially the last 3 games of the Bangalore leg, and for that matter, even the first game of the Lucknow leg, all these 4 games have been massively one-sided. Like, that's probably why, a question like this is being asked around. Let's take this comment as well from Asim. We can probably start off with that, Neha. Is the dependency on the toss a convenient excuse for poor performances by certain teams? Smriti lost the toss and she seemed to give it up then and there.
No, no. In all fairness, I don't think any team is using it as an excuse. I think RCB's content team themselves must be going through a really tough time because you see them, come out with these videos. If they were winning, the और भी ज़्यादा आते, but now they're showing the dressing room के videos and all of that, in which Luke Williams himself said, we can't attribute our result to the toss. Toss is there, it happens, but we still have to, come up and deliver our performances. And I don't think Smriti's body language suggested, arey, we lost the toss, so match ही चला गया. Maybe somewhere in the back and you feel you're coming in with those 2 losses, 3 losses. We started off the season so well with so much promise. And I think this is a point we spoke in our last podcast as well, right? About playing at home for RCB being a double-edged sword. You have like mad fans, like I think all of us here, and you have fans in the stadium as well. So it gets a little overwhelming in that sense. And we also spoke about how they're probably not used to the crowds and everything. They will get better. Again, not using that as an excuse, but these are just reasons, I'm citing for that. But yeah, I don't think any team so far has used it as a convenient excuse for poor performance, especially RCB. At least I have not come across that discourse so far, so I probably wouldn't judge them too harsh.
I'll throw it open to Janani as well. What do you make of that, question there? Do you think the RCB skipper is probably hiding behind that excuse given her own lack of performances?
Not at all. Actually, Akshay, your numbers, I had done some bit of numbers more on the averages side of things. So very interesting. Smriti's average this WPL is 23, close to your 20, but she's got 3 more than the average. Let's put that in perspective. Versus her average last year, which was 30. So for RCB, it's been that 7 runs into X number of games that has, kind of set them back because of multiple other reasons, but also SM firing at the top. So having said that number out there, I'm just trying to say that she still performed, 15% better than the average score. so she's definitely not hiding, and the numbers say that, right? And I don't, and like Neha said, no one's really said that, hey, it's because of the toss kind of a thing.
Yeah, and good to see that we're not holding back on the numbers. I enjoy my numbers, so I always love it when someone else also has some numbers to throw there. But about Smriti, though, again, which is why I do think while talking about Smriti and her average, so Smriti has the lowest average amongst all openers in the history of WPL while batting first. She averages 18, and that list includes Hayley Matthews as well. She also averages no more than 22. So there are a couple of big names, but with Smriti, what also needs to be taken into account, especially in this tournament alone, is the fact that she's had to bat first or in the first innings 4 times, 4 out of the 6 games that she's played in. And again, the thing is, when I even know while making a statement like this, a lot of people might come at me saying, how much will you defend Smriti Mandhana? Just accepted that she's not played well. True, that is true. No one is saying no. I don't think anyone's denying that. But you also need to take into account the kind of surfaces she's played on, the kind of situations she's had to play in. And that does make a bit of a difference, of course. But even then, all things said and done, you would expect something more. You would expect a lot more from your premier batter, from India's premier batter. So that definitely goes without saying. But the service itself, especially the one in Bangalore, given the lack of D, that's what made it even more surprising. The first innings was just so difficult to play, especially the power play. You saw RCB struggle twice. You saw MI also struggle, just going on to show that this wasn't an RCB specific problem. It was more of a Chinnaswamy specific problem. And hopefully Lucknow won't be that skewed in either side's favor, because we saw a one-sided encounter there as well, except this time it was the team batting first doing well. We don't need one-sided encounters, period. It's not about that. It's not about the fact that teams chasing are winning. In fact, if I remember correctly, even in the last episode, we spoke about how, despite teams have been winning batting first, or rather batting second, we've seen a lot of close encounters. Last week, we saw RCB, have those 2 close encounters. You also saw UP winning batting first. So it seemed like, there is an even match, an even contest between bat and ball. This time around, that doesn't seem to be the case, which is why, this conversation is being had. A couple of comments before we of course, move on to the next, talking point. Asim also going on to say, Okay, let's start off with Janvi's comments since they're responding to each other. As Janani is saying, when Meg Lanning is so glad to win the toss probably matters. Smithy definitely got very demoralized, but giving up seems a bit strong. Fair enough. Agree with you there. Money, meanwhile, saying, Vanakkam Neha Akshay. How are you, Janani ma'am? I'm also from Tamil Nadu. Big fan of your podcast. The Indian team needs a good finisher. We have one finisher in Richa. I think Amanjot is a good option because she can also bowl a few overs. Fair point, Money. Interesting again. We will talk about it, once we get to Mumbai, Amanjot as well. Anything else that I'm missing out on? There you go. Okay, let's take this up. In fact, I'm curious about the batting average for the first innings power play. Wickets were constantly collapsing. Well, I have the numbers right in front of me. So batting first in the power play, teams have averaged 23.81. This number goes up to 35.05 in the second innings. Just the sheer contrast, that's nearly a 50% increase in batting numbers. Just going on to show again, like you can take it or leave it, numbers are just there. So it's all about whether we like it or not, whether it paints a picture that we want to see or not. So that's all there is to it. But fingers crossed, we'll get to see teams chasing also teams defending also put up a stronger showing. We still have a few games left in Lucknow and Mumbai. Emma have got a couple of games. Emma have got 3 games in fact. Bangalore has got a couple of games. So fingers crossed, we're definitely in for a solid last week of the WPL. And hopefully, we do get to see RCB doing RCB things. So fingers crossed once again. But toss ke baare mein to kafi baat kar liya. Another thing that we would like to talk about, of course, scheduling concerns, yaar. Neha, last week we saw Delhi play 2 consecutive games, or rather 2 games on consecutive days. We'll soon be seeing Mumbai also take on, Gujarat and RCB on successive days in a tournament that has 5 rest days. Do you think the scheduling could have been a lot better?
Absolutely, Akshay. I mean, I really found it bizarre that ye kaisa scheduling kar diya. You have rest days in between. You have so many different legs also of the tournament. The caravan model where it's happening across so many venues. Yet you have a team that's playing back to back. I know Delhi did not make a fuss about it at all. I mean, due credit to Meg Lanning there. She's never the kind of captain who picks on excuses or uses that as a thing. They came back so strongly, and I mean, you're playing matches against the likes of Mumbai and RCB. But Delhi just clearly didn't show any sign of weakness or fatigue or that tiring thing at all. So I think massive credit to them. But it really paints a bad picture on the scheduling, man. There could have been a much more better intent with regard to the scheduling. Like UP had already gone to Lucknow and they were doing all their activities there. Unka to alag hi duniya chal raha tha. And here we have 2 teams playing again and again. And Delhi in this case just playing again and again, which did not make sense. Extremely bizarre, and did kind of expect better. Also, guys, we have to factor in that the Champions Trophy is happening. So a lot of it was, planned around that way. I mean, the fact that yesterday and today are rest days. So I'm not sure, what to honestly make of it, because the WPL is getting enough eyeballs, no doubt about that. You could see the kind of crowds, that came in Vadodara, where both I think Akshay and I had our apprehensions. Yaar, kya log aayenge, but we were happy to be, wiping the egg off our face, happy to be proven wrong. Bengaluru, of course, had to be one of the better venues. But I hope Lucknow can also deliver in that regard, especially the UP versus Gujarat match that happened. The crowds were very scanty, so kind of reserving my thoughts on that. I hope other teams bring in crowds, and UP themselves can get in the crowds. But yeah, man, seeing Delhi play back-to-back matches was a little bizarre. But I hope going ahead, thoda soch ke they make the planning. Yeah.
Janani, where do you stand on that? Because is there any merit in having teams play on successive days, given these rest days? Like, hair gap, so might as well utilize it and make sure that teams have adequate break between, 2 consecutive games.
I have to agree with you and Neha on that. It doesn't make sense to have matches, a team playing on 2 consecutive days. Having said that, the tournament has had a precedence, right? Both in the first season and the second season, where multiple teams have played on consecutive days. So maybe it's also it's like a trend or like a habit that has been formed with the scheduling team, and they probably aren't thinking enough. Like, okay, they played, no one's made a fuss about it. Let's keep going, kind of a thing. So no, even I agree that we shouldn't be having such scheduling, but my only point out there is maybe it's just taken as for granted or chalta hai kind of thing, and it's nice that it's getting brought up on forums. So probably, hopefully, next time things will change.
But I mean, fair, yeah, there is precedence. We've seen both the first seasons, of course, first couple of seasons have teams play on successive days. The only differentiating factor is that rest day bit. Because of the Champions Trophy, BCCI and the WPL governing committee had that presence of mind, had that foresight. Ki yaar, jab India khela, there's no point, having WPL fixtures. Then it probably would just, divide the viewership, and that might not be good for either of the fixtures. But my question is, this time around, you had that. So why didn't you take it to your advantage or play to your advantage? Because sure, you in the first couple of games there is that precedence. First couple of seasons there is that precedence. But this time around, I feel we are setting a dangerous precedent by saying that yaar, jo bhi ho na, we will have teams play on successive days because that's how it works. And come next year, when potentially teams would have to play on a home and away basis, you might see an MI or an RCB or a Gujarat Giants having to not just play on successive days, have to also travel and then play another game, and that will be a lot more hectic. And then फिर से वही बात आ जाएगी, हाँ last year भी तो हमने दिखा था, so why not? So that's where my
No, I
concern
agree.
is. Yeah.
No,
So,
completely
like,
agree, and that's why I said it's great that we are actually having this discussion, because it's definitely concerning and something to keep, something for the organizers to be mindful about.
Yeah, that is true. And in fact, this is a reason that I did think would come in. Janvi also saying the scheduling is fine. It's designed to maximize home games and minimize conflicts with the Champions Trophy. It's hard to design better than this with so many constraints. Neha, do you agree with that? Because, I mean, fair enough. There is merit in the argument that they had to play across 4 venues. So, invariably such things would happen because Gujarat will have to play as many games as possible in Vadodara. Bangalore would have to play, or rather RCB would have to play as many games as possible in Bangalore, similarly with UP Warriors and Lucknow. But then do you think that they could have been smarter and said, "Ki theek hai yaar, 4 venues mein nahi khelte. Let's just trim it down to 3 or 2 and stick to that so that we can ensure teams don't have to play on successive days." Do you think, basically it's a compromise. Do you think the governing committee has made a valid compromise by playing across 4 venues and in the process ending up, 2 teams playing on successive days? Or do you think they should have just stuck to 2 venues and, have everyone get adequate match break or break between match days?
I think in all fairness, Akshay, I'll go for option 2 here, that they could have probably limited the venues. I know this kind of goes against my own point earlier of saying, ki we should try to expand the game, bring in more venues and everything. But yeah, again, dealing with just 5 teams here, so it does come in with its own, fair set of challenges. Probably this time around, they should have gone in with just those 2 venues, thinking, ki boss, we have Champions Trophy that's looming in the background. That is going to be our direct competitor. And it's fine. We'll just do it across 2 venues. Maybe next year, say we can, consider bringing in probably other venues. We have the addition of the new team as well. So maybe that's when, you can have all these rest days and, schedule it properly. Even during the Women's T20 Challenge, a precursor to the WPL, I don't know, man. There were teams who played in the night and then they played like an afternoon game. I just don't understand. Like, there is absolutely no consideration for players or even their recovery time. I think at that time, Mithali Raj did kind of speak up about it. I think it was Velocity that had, I don't know if it was Velocity or Supernovas or the team names. Okay, atrocious. We'll talk about that later. But then I think one of the teams, did talk about, yeah, hum log aise back-to-back khel rahe. It doesn't really make sense. But they were still, just taking whatever was coming, because women's cricket for the longest time has been given the shorter end of the stick. So they're probably not at that sort of a stage to, complain ki, "Arey, ye nahi chalega, wo nahi chalega," and they're just happy that the WPL is there. But yeah, aise koi kuch bol nahi raha hai, to it shouldn't seem like, they are okay with it. I wish players could be vocal and they wouldn't, be penalized for it or, stripped of their contracts and all of that. Yeah, clearly we don't live in that sort of a climate, and players are not opening up, as openly as we would like them to. So yeah, that's what it is, I guess.
I mean, extending that same argument, Janani, do you think there's any merit in Asim's point here? Imagine if DC had lost both their back-to-back games, then there probably could have been a huge uproar around it. Do you think something like that could potentially have happened had they lost?
Not too sure. Meg Lanning as a captain is like the super professional person, right? She said, "Hey, a good thing that we're having 2 matches together. We'll take our momentum from the first and go into the second." And in the second, she said, "Oh yeah, we built on our momentum." So kind of flipping the paradigm. I'm going to go with Neha here in the sense, yeah, people are taking what we can because it's happening. But yes, Asim's point does have, if a team loses, then yeah, the uproar would have been interesting to watch. Having said that, I think the one thing while I don't completely agree with this entire scheduling at all, well, Janani had a point where she said, "Hey, with so many constraints, how do they build on stuff?" But then, if we have to make a scheduling more bias free, then every team should have played 2 games consecutively, right? That way, then it won't be a concern as much because you're saying, "Hey, everyone is getting." That is there from a bias standpoint. But yeah. What Asim's saying is sure, but DC specifically, because of the way she said, I'm just saying that they probably aren't looking at it, but that's also because it's women's cricket getting what it is and people taking what they have and running with it. So, yeah.
I mean, if my memory serves me right, last year UP Warriors was the only side to play on consecutive days. And in the first season, we saw 4 sides. I don't think all 5 had consecutive games or games on consecutive days, but 4 of them definitely had. So interesting that, I mean, like Janani mentioned, it also is probably down to the skipper and the kind of person she is and the kind of team environment that's been created. There's someone maybe who's a lot more, defensive, or someone who probably isn't too bothered with mincing their words. They would have probably just gone ahead and said, yeah, theek hai, you know what, this is wrong. I'll just call it out for what it is. And it's unfair to us if we are the only side having to play, or we are the only side of two to, have to play this. So fair enough that. Interesting though is that Delhi did end up winning both of their games. So I don't think anyone is complaining, which is why, a lot of this chatter, a lot of the chatter around this hasn't really been about this being a bad thing or something. Kyunki wo jeet gaye. So I do side with Asim on that. Ki had they lost both of their games, maybe not Meglaning herself, but we would have at least seen some sort of a chatter at least on social media, at least online. ताकि मतलब जो भी fans होते हैं या जो भी होते हैं, they would have definitely brought this up. So fair enough though. In fact, he also goes on to add, with DC playing on back-to-back days, players could have had a breakdown or sustained injuries. No recovery time, no time to re-strategize. Perhaps the organizers will only learn the hard way. Well, hopefully that won't be the case. So, देखने क्या होता है next year with WPL also slated to expand to a 6th new team. So hopefully the scheduling also gets a lot better, like Sports Fan says. But anyways, in terms of talking points, of course, that's what we had to discuss with the first couple of them. और भी काफी कुछ है बात करने के लिए. But before that, guys, like we mentioned earlier, first तो like button दबाओ, please. Make sure you've subscribed to us if you haven't already. We will be back day after tomorrow for the watch-alongs, like always, Friday, Saturday. And this time I will be there. This time we will be there for both the games. It's GG taking on DC. That'll be a mouth-watering clash. And if that's not enough, it'll be the home side UP Warriors taking on RCB on Saturday. 2 mouth-watering encounters, and yeah, we can't really, wait for that to happen soon enough. We'll be doing a watch-along for both those games. Sunday, of course, is also the Champions Trophy final, so unfortunately, we won't be able to do anything because WPL mein hi kuch nahi ho raha. So do tune into that as well. And before I forget, guys, we have floated around a Google form on in our description. Please do check it out. It'll take you no more than 2 minutes. It's a feedback form. We're just trying to collect feedback about the podcast. Just your thoughts on it. What have you made of it so far? What do you like? What do you dislike? Anything you want us to change, add, include, exclude. So we're more than happy to listen to you guys just to make sure we can improve your viewing/listening experience. So please do us a world of good. Just make sure you fill in the form whenever you get the time. So yeah, anyways, time for us to probably talk about each of the teams we've seen. Let's have the points table out. There you go. DC is standing well and truly on top there. 5 wins already, 10 points. They're all but in the top 3 spots. They're all but into the knockouts. Now it's all about whether they actually go directly through to the finals by securing another first place finish. So that still remains to be seen. Apart from that, Gujarat Giants, I don't think anyone saw that coming. Gujarat Giants at the end of week 3, standing at the 2nd position with 6 points, with a healthy net run rate of 0.357. Again, not on my bingo card for sure. MI 3rd, RCB unfortunately 4th, UP Warriors 5th. Let's start off with the Delhi Capitals. Neha, so far, we saw what they did in the last week. 2 games they played, 2 games they won. They're looking firmly placed to potentially win their first ever title.
Absolutely. Delhi, man, what a season they've had. Just looking at their performances right from, I think, WPL 2023, 2024, always, the first team to kind of qualify, make their presence right at the top of the table. And eventually, they kind of stumble in the knockouts, but I wouldn't hold it against them because it's just one game. You can't really predict where that would go. But this time around, to, I think they've been very positive with their cricket. I know the first 4 matches, maybe they lost 2-1-2, but then, bouncing back and just coming to win those 3 matches, really speaks volumes about them. I think we spoke enough about, playing back-to-back matches. Clearly didn't affect them. They're just coming like this, well-oiled unit. So many players stepping up to the forefront and delivering every single time, right? Meg Lanning, I know a lot of people criticize her, she's probably past her prime, doesn't play a lot of international cricket. But every single time those doubts that start creeping in, she comes in with a performance to remind all of us, boss, I'm here to dominate, I will do my thing. And even Shefali Verma, I think both of them form such a solid opening duo. Jess Jonathan, man, coming in at number 3 and doing her sort of thing, out of syllabus stuff. Because this season, I really thought they were going to stick with Jemmy, coming in at number 3. But Jess Jonathan has really been performing well. Annabelle Sutherland with the ball, I think it's really going under the radar because it is a performance, Hank, you wouldn't really pay attention to that. Annabelle Sutherland has been doing so well. And the fact that Delhi has also kind of trusted the youngsters, right? Which a certain blue team, I just love using this sentence, which another blue team does not clearly do. But Charani, man, coming in, picking those 2 wickets, I think she's just been spectacular versus RCB. Then they had Nikki Prasad as well, do her thing. Trita Sadhu as well. The opportunities that she got a little later in the season. I think all of them, yeah, man, Delhi's really shaping up like a great unit. I mean, their net run rate is positive. They've already qualified. So they can at least play their next match, probably just 1 match left, with freedom and just, try out new combinations and stuff. Again, man, Meg Lanning, the way she's been leading the side, it's just been fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely been fantastic. In fact, both the games being won comprehensively by Delhi Capitals and was against MI and RCB, arguably 2 of the best sides apart from Delhi Capitals themselves in the history of the tournament. Janani, again, sure, they've done very well, but you cannot also probably not discount the fact that they won 6 tosses out of the 7 games. A bit of luck also going their way in that sense.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, see, again, I wouldn't have thought so much about it, but for that fist pump, like that fist pump is etched and like a core memory of WPL 2025. Yeah, toss is going their way, but I also think that UPW loss kind of, they got that break and then they went back, they thought through things. And I think both, not both, Jenny, JJ, Meg, all of them reiterated this, right? That they spent that time and then said, okay, let's make our own energy on the field. It's like, okay, if things don't happen, we do what we need to do properly, get our fundamentals right, and then things will happen. So it's not like wait for things to happen, but make your own energy was the words that each of them used. So I think they kind of reset it well. And that's also, I mean, Meg Lanning as a leader there has, done a great job. But yes, toss definitely. But probably positive vibes and all that things went their way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, sure, the uncontrollables have gone their way, but you cannot also, look past the fact that the controllables, that's where they have ensured that, they've not given anything away. Be it Shefali Verma, be it Meg Lanning, Jess Jonathan, like Neha mentioned, Tita Sadhu, that spell against MI. I mean, the figures might not exactly reflect it, but that was a brilliant spell. Yeah, a lot of boundaries conceded through edges. She should have had at least a couple more wickets. And unfortunately, that was one of ththose spells. जिन्होंने देखा हमको पता है कि यार bowling तो कमाल की थी. So hopefully you will see her develop such spells and importantly also convert such spells into more wickets for her side and for herself. But all in all, again, they are looking really good now. First few games, they did seem very scratchy. That win against UP, that win against them might almost seem like, yeah, this is not the side we'd seen in the first couple of seasons. In fact, we could potentially see them not make it to the playoffs or the knockouts for the first time ever. That's how bad they looked. And from there, they really, sort of turned it around big time. Everyone seems to be chipping in at the right time. And another name that sort of seems to be missing right now is Arundhati Reddy. She's conceded 52 runs against UP Warriors in DC's last loss. They dropped her since then, and they won every single game. That's the major difference, and not the toss. That's a very interesting point to seem like. I don't know what to make of that. Janani, where do you stand, with this argument? Because 2-3 months pehle, we as Team India fans were arguing, were screaming, were loathing the fact that Team India isn't playing her. And cut to 2 months later, her WPL side also does not seem to be placing a lot of confidence in her. Do you think there's, Asim is right over here?
Okay, 50-50, right? Because correlation is not causation. Having said that, yes, but even I felt that 52 runs, more than the runs being, I mean, yeah, you get hit. I think it was the lack of the variation and Arundhati not necessarily thinking through enough, just bowling into Shinel's slot, and probably that didn't help. So, and of course, then again you got newer players standing up, and of course Tita's coming in. But then also them focusing on the fundamentals. Akshay, since you're a fan of all those numbers, Shikha and Marzan Kaap are at the top of the dot ball bowlers, the top 5 in the tournament. And pretty much, I think Shikha, Annabelle Sutherland, and Cappy have an economy of just under 7. And again, again featured in the top 10 in the best economies so far. Uh, Jess is, of course, a little lower, but then she's got the number of wickets. So all I'm saying is the bowlers are also chipping in and all of that. But I think a 50-50 agreement with us team on that, to answer your question.
I mean, fair enough. You can't sort of dispute the fact that they have done well ever since they dropped Arundhati. But again, I think this is more a case of causation and, correlation and not causation. People confusing between the two. तो वो होता है ठीक है. I mean, you can't blame the side for making that change. She, of course, did have a bad game and also handed UP Warriors a win that they probably shouldn't have. So ठीक है, होता है. We've all seen this happen earlier as well. But Neha, what do you make of this question? Let's answer this before we move on to the next side. What do you think has DC improved from the past seasons, which makes you believe that they'll not falter again in the knockout stage this time?
Honestly, even I was thinking about this because when you look at Delhi, right, they haven't changed their core a lot from the first season right onto this one. We see the addition of, a few young players in that setup who have kind of contributed, and that has worked out really well. But Delhi is a team that, just the more games you see them play, the better they do get, right? But like in WPL 2023 and 2024, they just, invariably ended up making it to the finals. So there's like a massive gap between their last league game and that, final game. So mujhe wo laga, somewhere I just felt like they were probably not that match ready, and that probably led to, a few things not going that way. Because come on, this is Meg Lanning we are talking about, I don't think she's the kind of person who would let nerves get the better of her, or would kind of infuse that sort of a mindset in her team. It's a fine, we have to win, and this and that. It's just been a few mistakes that Delhi did that kind of did not work out well for them. I think in both cases they were kind of they batted first and they did not put that great of a total. So obviously defending becomes a massive headache in that sense. But I think the core and the complexion of the team still looks good. I think the way they've played, in the past, like at least 4 games, has given the impression that they are looking like a well-oiled unit. This time they could possibly go that extra mile. Also, just look at Mumbai and RCB, man. The way they've been playing, like RCB, to matlab kya hi bole. They've lost 4 matches in a row. They're not looking like the side that we thought, they will look like. Understandably so, injuries and all of that. Even Mumbai, right? They have kind of blown hot and cold. Gujarat might definitely come a little out of syllabus there. But UP Warriors, too, for their credit, have not been doing that great. So I think DC has covered a lot of bases. And this time around, because, they will not hopefully let the nerves get the better of them, can actually go that extra distance. And yeah, man, I hope people are not too harsh to judge them. Do final haar gaye. But people should look at it this way: they've actually made it to 2 finals on the basis of some very clinical performances in their league stages, right? So I think people should credit that sort of a base work that has helped them reach where they have.
I mean, there you go, Mani. He is a huge RCB. DC fan. RCB nahi yaar. Freudian slip. Let's just put it down to that. Hopefully, this year, DC will win the title. They deserve. They've played some great cricket throughout the tournament. Meg Lanning will add another trophy to her trophy cabinet. Fingers crossed with that. We're all here to see that. And hopefully, she'll also do that iconic SRK pose of hers. I'll probably put it that way. And it'll be a great way to celebrate the title, to be honest. But yeah, in terms of Delhi Capitals, that was that. Speaking of the next side, though, Gujarat Giants, 2 back-to-back wins, and I don't think that's also happened often enough for them. The fact that we're just, cheering or rooting for them after 2 consecutive wins goes on to show how shambolic they've been in the first couple of seasons. But Neha, again, the win against RCB and then the win against UP Warriors yesterday, they will really be chucked to bits right now.
Absolutely. And to quote a certain Phoebe Litchfield, I think she was like, yeesh, we won like 2 matches in a row. This has probably never happened in Gujarat Giants history. Man, I think she just absolutely wears her heart on her sleeve and she had to, pretty much get that out of her system. But yeah, man, the way Gujarat has been playing, I think again they started off with that very sad loss to RCB, then, bounced back with the win. But again, losing to, Delhi and Mumbai kind of dented their prospects. I think last episode of us, if you listen, to like, Gujarat is not doing this. They don't trust their openers, and dependence on Beth Mooney to always kind of bail them out. But again, coming good versus teams like RCB and UP. I mean, the win versus UP, right? You're winning by 81 runs, like clinically, outplayed the opposition, which has massively helped your net run rate. I mean, Gujarat probably. I think that is something Phoebe added again. Us being in like the second position on the table has probably never happened. So it just goes to show, right? The unit really believes in themselves. And large credit again goes to Ash Gardner, man. The way she has led the team. A lot of us had apprehensions about her captaincy. Leading a WPL franchise is it's entirely different gravy, right? I mean, she's been a part of a lot of leadership groups in teams she has played for, but then WPL is going to be a challenge. And the way she's kind of, risen to the occasion has been massive. Again, I think Beth Mooney definitely deserves credit for that. A lot of people, criticize her ki, "Arey, strike rate, play such an anchor role and this and that." But yeah, man, I think her knock versus UP was just amazing. Like that 96 runs was worth like a century. So they have a lot of players who are coming to the party and actually delivering. Be it Kashvi Gautam, Priya Mishra, in the start, Tanuja Kanwar. I did want to see a lot of, Simran Sheikh doing her things, but anyways, we still have the season left, so let's see how that kind of pans out. Bharti Fulmili, the fact that I'm able to say so many names from the Gujarat Giants setup shows that they kind of, trust their players to do their thing. And really happy with the way Ash Gardner has been leading the side. Hopefully, Gujarat can sustain this momentum as, we look at the fag end of the WPL. Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting you mentioned that, and Janvi also goes on to point out that this is the first time ever for Gujarat. I mean, first time ever that they've managed to conjure 2 consecutive wins. That is true, Janvi. I mean, this season se pehle they only had 4 wins in total across 16 games. So yeah, it is. I mean, it is a happy sign for them. But Janani, what do you make of that domestic core? Because at the beginning of the season, and to be honest, till the end of the last week as well, it almost seemed like that domestic core is what is, sort of making it so difficult for Gujarat Giants, or the lack of it rather. Like they don't have enough domestic superstars or domestic players with experience, and that seems to have turned around. The names Neha took, Priya Mishra, Kashvi Gautam, Bharti Fulmili to some extent, Harleen Deol, the way she played in the last game, they've all managed to sort of contribute to their side in different shapes and form. Add Tanuja Kanwar to that, there's already 5 names taken. And there's one name that I'll never, ever, 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 ever take. But even then, that means 6 other players who have contributed arguably. So do you think something's changed there?
Yep, totally. I think Ash Gardner, okay, I'll start maybe multiple points, but the first one is probably over a week, Ash Gardner is a captain. Remember, she's an all-rounder, obviously one of the world's best all-rounders, and as a captain, she probably connected with the bowlers and the field started changing, if you noticed. And they started allowing them to also, like the domestic players started allowing them to change the field a little here and there because domestic players understand the other domestic players who are playing. And also they know what their strengths are. So I think one, she started understanding the game of her bowlers better. And obviously that adds to the general energy of the group. And, they pumped up. And then, of course, Kashvi playing how she did, Priya turning up really well. And Tanuja, again, I think Beth Mooney has always backed her. And then Ash is backing her even more. So it's a lot of validation for your talent from really super talented international folks. So I think it's the general energy. And I just want to point one thing here. The first game they played, they did lose to RCB. That game, they did lose. They did have a lot of misfields, drop a few catches. But then they were gone on the field. They were all throwing themselves around like their life depended on it. But probably, the throws were a little hard and all that. Like there was a lot of nerves, and nerves was shown on how they were throwing stuff around and not necessarily converting the momentum they had to chances. I think they've gotten that back. Yeah, exactly. Last year, Harleen and Kashvi were injured. Beth Mooney wasn't having, like, she obviously doesn't necessarily love playing the captain. So all of that. But yeah, the core has definitely performed. But I think it's also a two-way thing where the I think just the general understanding of who wants what has improved, and Ash being able to wear both the bowler and the batter hat kind of thing has helped us set better fields and generally improve the momentum in the group, the positive vibes and move things along.
Yeah, I mean, they've genuinely been fantastic, and Kashvi Gautam in particular, been absolutely in love with her bowling. Just, the skill sets that she brings to the table, be it movement with the new ball, she's also got the ability to skid it across. She's got a sharp bouncer. Importantly, she's also got the heart in her to try and attempt it. And then that gun yorker, the dismissal of Richa Ghosh, and then the celebration. We all remember that we saw it live in front of our eyes, Neha. But it's just great to see her also be able to execute it at this stage. I don't think anyone was doubting her skills. The only question was, will she able to rise up to the occasion, come a platform like the WPL, because pressure, fans, crowds, lights, all of that jazz, it tends to, suck the energy out of you, if I may say so. So good to see her actually thrive in this and not just survive. And fingers crossed, we'll get to see her soon, even for Team India in that Indian blue. So, I mean, hoping for that, manifesting for that in some sense. Meanwhile, Sports Fan also goes on to say he or she saw a stat on broadcast where they saw, or rather where they showed, Gujarat had the most wickets in the power play amongst all teams this season. How do you see the new ball bowling attack? I mean, just to put the numbers out there, Neha, run rate of 6.39, average of 17.69, balls per dismissal 16.62, best on all counts and best by a mile. There's no one even remotely close to them in the power play this season. Just going on to show how good they've been so far. What do you think has worked for them apart from even Kashvi Gautam? Do you think Gardner's own captaincy has played a role probably here?
Yeah, and I think that's why I agree with Janani's point earlier that the way Ash Gardner has used her bowlers, right? It's been much better than the previous captains for Gujarat Giants. I think Kashmi Gautam, yes, she's been doing well. She's been an absolute revelation. Thank God, because a lot of people felt ki, after injury she's coming with this whole price tag pressure and all of that. Yet, coming and actually delivering six volumes, about the kind of character she is, but the kind of support she's getting from other bowlers too, right? Deanna Dalton, man, I mean, no doubt she's one of the best, like pace bowling all rounders we have. Okay, not pace bowling all rounders, but she's an all rounder who also, has pace as a skill set. So the way she's been delivering too, right, from the other end, that really helps. Every single match, see her being electric on the field, getting you at least one or two wickets. Meghna Singh too, man. Although she gets hit around a little, a lot of people are like, she doing in the team? Why are they not including Shabna? Still, manages to probably keep things tight and at least generate those chances. And with the spin triumph of Tanuja Kanwal, Priya Mishra, and Ash Gardner, I think the whole unit is really shaping well. They don't really have to look for, say, a seventh bowling option, because this this bowling combination is sort of doing their job. And yeah, I mean, they kind of pride themselves in being able to probably bowl the opposition out and defend the kind of targets they have, thanks to the contributions of their batting as well. So yeah, I think that's probably worked out really well for Gujarat, a team that is kind of finding its rhythm and mojo, and they're kind of peaking now. Excited to see how they kind of make the most of it. They're probably left with what, I think 2 more matches, right? So yeah, kind of just excited to see how that goes. But their bowling is really shaping up well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 2 games left against DC and RCB, so 2 not so easy encounters, so to say. So let's see how that pans out for them, and importantly, will they be able to make it to the first ever knockout game? So fingers crossed for that. Meanwhile, Money also mentions that GG need a powerful opener because Beth is an anchor. They have tried Hemlata and Laura and Helene, but it's not worked for them. Why are they still playing Hemlata? Simran is a good player. I think Simran can be used as an opener and also probably potentially maximize the power play. Not a bad shout, to be honest. I mean, a last roll of dice, so to say. Hemlata has just not been able to buy a run this season. So might as well give Simran Sheikh a shout and see. मतलब मुश्किल से अगर एक छक्का भी लगा, I think she'll be past Hemlata's run tally for the season. Just a joke, guys. But 2 छक्के मारेगी तो if I'm not wrong, she probably would. So you never know. So हो सकता है. So fair shout, Money. Let's see if that actually happens. But that was that from Gujarat Giants. There was only one other side that actually played 2 games this season, and that is the Royal Challengers Bengaluru, who are firmly rooted to their 4th position there. Janani, those last 2 games, man, like पहले 2 losses में तो फिर भी तुम, like, we all could justify by saying they came close, they fought hard. There's no coming back from those 2 games in the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think. Okay, let's just do match one and match two, right? Against GG, we could have just probably said it was just one day when everyone had an off day, right? Like they had that high pressure super over wala game, and it was just an off day. Pez gone into I mean, it was about 25 for three, and then Ragvi and Kanika got that 48-run partnership going, but then nothing really moved that day. And then, though they had, I think, GG at 66 for three in 10 overs, but then Ash and Phoebes came and killed the contest. Like, bad day at office, just dismissed where everything didn't go as well as planned. But the game against DC for me personally was a tad disappointing, but also, uh, again, maybe it's a mix of toss, strategy from the opponents, and, RCB batters not necessarily playing smart, right? Like, I wanted to throw out this interesting stat here. Pest scored 50 from 37 deliveries before the 15th over. After 15th over, she got 8 deliveries and she scored 8 runs. So your best batter getting to play just 8 deliveries in 5 overs, and she's not out also. She's not not like a wicket went and she lost her wicket. So probably that really hurt, right? Because they were anyway cruising at that 7.2 per over through the innings, even though Smriti and Dani were out. Ragbi had stitched that partnership and things were going. But yeah, I think that really hurt. And of course, DC got clinical. That one beautiful catch happened, and then after that, yeah, they just said, "Hey, let's kill the chase and kill the chase."
I mean, both teams killed the chase technically. And Neha, again, RCB's performances, especially in the second game, you did see Renuka Singh Thakur start off brilliantly there. First 2 overs, first 2.5 overs going for just the 5 runs. And then she also was able to nip out Mick Lanning early on. But it's still, all in all, been a very, very, very bleak season for them so far.
Absolutely, Akshay. I mean, just looking at the Delhi game itself, you can't defend 147 versus a team like Delhi, man, that has batting till like their tail. I mean, in this case, I know Janani can probably not bat as much, but at least with Minumani, you have batting, right? So, although they did manage to get Meg Lanning out, who was clearly struggling, and I think a lot of people had given thoda weightage and attention to this matchup between Renuka Swing Thakur and Meg Lanning. Yeah, that kind of did play out according to RCB's favor, but Shivali Verma, man, I know we're going to be talking about her in our top performers side of things, but I think she was just spectacular. Just single-handedly took the game away from RCB, and even that early inroad didn't really sort of help because 147, no, it's not easy to defend versus Delhi. A lot of lapses did happen that day. I think this was the one time that Luke Williams also, in that post-match dressing room video, he did talk about, we should actually be disappointed with our performance. We couldn't really capitalize on those key moments. He spoke about it very openly, and I'm sure what was not recorded also, he would have probably, not given them a dressing, but then would have mentioned, what clearly did not seem to work out well for them. And I think even in the broadcaster interaction, I think Smriti was asked, did you also think should Ragvi Bisht have been sent at the position she was sent? Because I think her knock, right, like 33 or 32, doesn't make for good reading, right? A lot of people would have felt that you batted for 32 balls, so we would have expected something better. But that's when I think Smriti, the captain, really came through for me. She said, this is Ragvi Bisht we're talking about. She's just a 20-year-old. You can't expect her to do miracles. It's a learning curve. But I feel like if it was any other captain, another other blue team captain, would have probably been like, ha, yehi hua tha, throw the player under the bus and all of that. But I think the kind of belief that she has in these young players, somewhere maybe we may not see immediate results, but I think in the long run, it will definitely help the confidence of these players. So RCB will definitely take a lot of sadness from this loss. But again, 2 matches still left. Destiny is in their hands. I'm not sure if we'll be in a similar position after we have lost the next 2 matches, and then we're pulling out not just calculators but scientific calculators to make sure what is going to happen. But yeah, RCB would be disappointed with these 2 losses. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I'm happy that the DC game, I did not watch a single bit of it. I was happily downing myself, or rather drowning myself in whiskey and Bollywood. And come to think of it, Bollywood and whiskey is a great, 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 sort of medicine for all these RCB related hangovers. But Janani, about, Spriti, Neha mentioned how she sort of came through for her in that post-match presentation. But Smriti the batter, or Smriti the leader, rather. We spoke about the batter briefly early on, but Smriti, the leader, the captain, do you think there's some amount of responsibility that she needs to take for all these losses, or how do you look at that?
No, I think she's been a good leader in terms of not throwing anyone under the bus and being able to still get her team to go through what they've gone through. But I think again, she herself was super disappointed that at RCB at Chinnaswamy, and they couldn't pull off that victory as they would have loved to. And I'm sure she is a super responsible leader. She's probably taking it much more harder than most of the other people are going to. So, and I think even that match when she said we should all be saying sorry to Pez for losing it. So I think she's taking it as she should. Probably the next two games, hopefully things would change, and then all this learning together, uh, comes through. And but then I know we should definitely a big shout out to the way she's supporting the youngsters and not necessarily throwing them, not throwing them under the bus, but also giving them that continued opportunity. Just one point there, though, yeah, Ragbi scored 33 out of 32, but that particular partnership, I think, between Pez and Ragbi, they had like 66 runs out of almost 9 overs and going at round 7. So stage was kind of set. Probably in that match, the explosiveness didn't happen more than things. Those last 5 overs came to bite. The thing moving along till then was fine. One point I want to add here, which is slightly interesting, again a bit of data. Richa Ghosh, I know we all love her. Her strike rate is amazing, and also this time her strike rate has been 162 versus her usual 142 in the last 2 seasons. But then her average has been, I think something like, hang on, I had written, 6 innings, 125 runs, including a 64 not out, versus 9 innings, 257 runs, average of 31 versus 42, strike rate of 164 versus 142. So it's almost like, again, 11 runs per game from her, 7 runs per game from Smriti. So that's like 20 into 6. That's what has also been hurting RCB in some ways.
Yeah, very valid points, those. In fact, like some people have also spoken repeatedly about, the over reliance on Elise Perry with the bat, especially, and in the last couple of games, that sort of contrast became even more starker. So we can understand where, those arguments or those conversations are happening. But Ayush, meanwhile, asking what could be the reason RCB hasn't done well in the Bengaluru leg this season. Yeah, again, of course, one part of it is toss. The other part of it, of course, 2 close games not going their way. And the Gujarat Giants game, it was very evident that they did not see the surface playing out this way. In fact, it almost seemed like they had come prepared for a maths exam and it turned out to be Hindi. वैसा वाला सीन था, बिल्कुल अता पता नहीं था. They did not have any idea what was happening. In fact, even in the post-match presentation, Smriti spoke about how they kept on going for their shots. They did not sort of rework their strategy. They did not try to apply themselves. They came in expecting a similar surface to that UP Warriors game. कि अच्छा high run scoring surface होगा. We can play through the line. We can hit with the straight bat and all of it. None of that happened, and unfortunately, they'd already lost so many wickets by the time they realized that they had, sort of sunk in deep. But in the second game, in the next game, they did rework a bit. 147 wasn't too bad considering how much MI and RCB themselves had scored in the previous 2 games. But Shefali Verma just blew them out of the water. It was just a Shefali Verma show, and unfortunately for RCB, that has meant 4 consecutive losses for them in their last 4 games. So let's see if they are able to, turn it around from here. It's going to take a hell of an effort, to be able to do that. So it won't be easy. Does the panel have any confidence in RCB winning against UP Warriors if Perry fails to form? I'll just say yes and move on because we still have a bunch of other things to discuss. But time for us to now talk about, some of the top performers we've seen in week 3. Not a lot of games, so you might see a couple of performers from the same team, but that was expected. Last week, we humne dekha UP Warriors say we had 3 folks. This time around, it's Gujarat Giants taking a big chunk of that cake. Beth Mooney, Ashley Gardner, Tanuja Kanwar. So a lot of names to talk about. Let's start with Beth Mooney. Let's start with Beth Mooney's biggest fan, probably. Janani, how important was that knock for her and Gujarat Giants?
In the context of the game, super important because they needed someone to bat at the top, be that anchor, but then play at a good clip. And we know that she has the ability to really improve on the strike rate. I think she hit. And interestingly for me, she hit about 17 fours out of the 96 runs she scored. So that's like she's just ran 28 runs vis-a-vis the amount of runs she used to run. She did during the Ashes series, and with a strike rate of 162, again above her usual average. I think it was a super important knock, and I think yeah, in some ways a game changer for them because it gave the bowlers enough to bowl with and go for the aggressive fields that they wanted to go for. And remember, UP has all those big hitters. So, and also they were batting first, and throughout the tournament, teams batting first hadn't necessarily won. So, I think all of those, considering all of those factors, yeah, super important. Interestingly, I think the last year in pretty much every franchise league that she's played, she scored an unbeaten 90, both in the hundreds and WBPL, and now at WPL. And it's, yeah, pretty good. I was super happy to see Moons perform. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The boundaries that you mentioned, Gujarat Giants also scored 27 boundaries and all. Funnily enough, first game ever in the history of WPL, MI scored 31 fours. Second game, RCB versus DC scored 30 fours. Since then, no one else has been able to breach that. And Gujarat Giants have come close. They've hit rather 27 boundaries 3 times. They've hit 28 boundaries 1 time. But no other side has exceeded Gujarat Giants after the first couple of games. So, hey, there is potential this time around. Hopefully, things seem to be, clicking at the right time for them. So, fingers crossed, they will be able to do well. And Beth Moni coming to form is probably the biggest story for them because we all know how important she is. We all know how big a bank she is, rather. Like WPL, even for Australia for that matter, just the way she just goes about her business and makes sure she keeps getting the 70s, 80s, 90s consistently. She is like the antithesis to Shefali Verma. On the one hand, you have Shefali Verma with that high risk, high reward approach. 30-40 consistently शायद बना सकते हैं, कभी कभार वो भी नहीं बनाएगी. And on the other hand, you have someone like a Beth Mooney, absolutely risk-free cricket. Like at no point in time do you think कि हाँ यार ये तो बहुत aggressively खेल रही है. No, she's probably the kind of batter I'd hate bowling to because I wouldn't have even realized and she would have already notched up a 50 or 30 balls and I'd be like, wait a second, ये run कहाँ से बने भाई? मैंने तो देखा ही नहीं इसको. No, there's no flash, there's nothing like that. Aram se just goes about her business and that's what we love about her, to be honest. But yeah, spoke about Beth Moni.
I have to jump in here. Sorry, because you mentioned Shefali Verma. There's this article, I think, not sure, Kalyani Mangle or Lavanya had written about how Shefali and Alisa Healy are similar, made from the same cloth, that high risk, high reward. Because Alisa Healy, every 4-5 innings is when she comes through. So, and Beth Mooney is that radar around which she can go, because of which she can go and play freely. So, yeah, because you mentioned Shifu, I had to bring in Mitch, but yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Shefali and Beth Moni ever get to open together. That'll be, one interesting opening combination to see play out. So, dekhna kya hota hai. But yeah, we spoke about Beth Moni. Time to talk about her antithesis. Neha, Shefali Verma's knock against RCB. Like, in general, she has been good, but what did you make of that knock?
Absolutely, man. This was such a fantastic knock from Shefali Verma. I think through our watch-alongs, one opinion that I've been extremely consistent with is that even if Shefali Verma is giving me knocks like this, I would still take it. I know it does come in with the whole point, sometimes she gets out early, but it's knocks like this that I absolutely live for, right? I mean, this was, against RCB and they had lost Meg Lanning early, so needed her to, kind of stick through and see the game through. And she did that in a very commendable fashion. I think she brought in 8 fours, 4 sixes. And the way she was just, able to even get those quick singles here and then. I think she went after Renuka Singh Thakur that day, almost, tomed her for 24 runs. And against all bowlers, she was just at her prolific best, right? She was in control for almost 74 bursts at the time. And probably, her productive shot was also the slog shot. I guess watching it on repeat as well, because seeing Shefali Verma in form is something, you have to take because you don't know when the next one will come. So, might as well make the most of when you see her in full flow. And this was honestly a knock like that. At one point, I was hoping, should she go for that the century? Is this going to happen? Is this the match? But it wasn't the case, and I'm sure we will see a centurion very soon. I hope in this edition itself, because we've been talking about who could possibly be that centurion. But Shefali Verma being in good nick is definitely a good sign, and I think even I posted it somewhere. Shefali is really making a case for herself to make a comeback for India, at least in T20s. Because of the way she has been batting, and she brings in that sort of a mindset as well. So yeah, really happy to see Shefali kind of progress, and hope to see her, come good for Delhi in other crunch matches as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her coming good for them has also meant that their power play numbers, Meg Lanning, Shefali Verma have been the best opening pair, in the history of WPL. I don't think anyone's disputed that. Even numbers themselves suggest that. But this season, they've really taken it to another level, yeah. Like a run rate of 8.4, an average of 70. Bizarre. Like, while maintaining the highest run rate, they've also managed to maintain the highest average. And just goes on to show, like, usually with high risk, you see high reward. But this time around, they've somehow managed to, sort of bring in that perfect blend of taking risks, getting those boundaries, but at the same time, not giving away their wickets. And that's what's really worked wonders for them. So, yeah, I mean, they are looking in good stead right now with also, the likes of Jenny, Marizan Kaap, Jess Jonathan, Nikki Prasad even. So, hopefully, like we said earlier, fingers crossed, we will get to see them lift their first trophy ever this season. Next player up, of course, is the Gujarat Giants skipper, Ashley Gardner. 58 of 31, which also included 19 runs of that Prema Rawat over, and then 1 for 22 in her 4-over spell. Again, an all-round spell for Ashley Gardner, not the first time, an all-round performance rather from Ashley Gardner, not the first time against RCB alone, let alone the tournament. But just goes on to show the kind of value add she brings to the table. There's the reason why she was or is the most expensive overseas player in the history of the tournament, and this is why she was paid the big bucks. First of all, with the ball, 1 for 22, Chinnaswamy may, irrespective of how the surface is, the boundary dimensions are smaller, the surface always ends up easing out, so it's never, ever, ever easy. Bowlers can never, ever, sort of just assume कि हाँ boss अभी surface अच्छा है तो मैं अच्छे से कर पाऊंगी. That'll never be the case. So good to see her do well. She ensured that the likes of Kanika Ojha, Rakhi Bish, especially while they were rebuilding, never, found it easy to keep hitting those sixes or boundaries. And if that containing role wasn't enough, her role with the bat, RCB had brought in Prema Rawat with the sole intention of targeting the likes of Ashley Gardner and Deanna Doughton even. We all know, like the numbers also suggest that Ashley Gardner is not exactly the greatest players of leg spin. She's come in and fresh in the middle, first over she faces is the Prema Rawat, leggy, who can potentially get her wicket. What does she do? 6, 6, 4, 4, 1. And she's like, chalo boss, hum nikalte hain yahan se. Sorry, 6, 4, 4, 4, 1. And he was like, chalo match khatam karte hain. At that point in time, 8 overs, 42 for 1. The game was actually in balance. RCB was still in it very well, and should Ashley Gardner had been dismissed then, you could have potentially seen the game tilt in RCB's favor, but Ashley Gardner was having none of that. Just the way she attacked Prema Rawat, attacked her out of the game, potentially even the tournament, and just going on to show what she's made of. Like the way she pulled, the way she cut, the way she drove, and then from there on, she just single-handedly won the game for Gujarat Giants that day. And yeah, like we said, it seems to be clicking right now. Beth Mooney, Ash Gardner, Deandra Doughton, performances from all through the lineup. Hopefully, Phoebe Litchfield is also due a match-winning performance yet in WPL. We can see some of that during the game against Delhi Capitals. I'll be rooting for that, to be honest. So, fingers crossed, once again, fantastic performance. And Gujarat Giants, chalo bhai karte hain is baar. But Nat Brandt, Janani, another all-round performance. Yeah, matlab, MI to have practically been, just winning games on her back.
Yeah, totally. And whatever, I mean, it's also been almost, I know a lot of focus on Pez for doing all that she's doing, but Nat has quietly pretty much done so much through this tournament for MI and that particular game, given that, coming on the back of what Chanel had done, quietly sneaked in what she had to sneak in, got 3 wickets for her 4 overs and went only for 18 runs, and then came back and, getting in those fours, and I think she had a couple of 1-6 of that match or something. But yeah, ensured that she played the beautiful game she plays, just playing angles and cutting, piercing the field and just manipulating the field. I think, she's been phenomenal. No wonder, I think both top 10 in the bowling so far and second in the batting rate, right? After Pesh, she's been scoring runs by bushels and whatever, tons and tons of runs. So yeah, phenomenal performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, again, if you look at the numbers as well, if I'm not wrong, highest run scorer to pata hai for Mumbai Indians. She's also the highest wicket taker, averaging at 17, 18. Neha, यार मतलब लोग I mean RCB at least Perry की बात करते हैं. There's not enough chatter around the fact that Emma have been super dependent on Nat Silverbrand.
Yeah, Akshay, again a fair point, because even in our watch alongs, we often talk about, yeah, Mumbai obviously has their overseas players, doing bulk of the work, the heavy lifting and all of that. But honestly, it's just Nat Silverbrand, man. Every single time, bails them out of trouble with the bat, with the ball. And I'm not sure why fans don't talk enough about it, because as a team, sometimes Mumbai just goes through phases where, they just don't have other players stand up and deliver, and just then they still end up winning matches on the back of like a good performance like this, from Nat Silverbrand. So that's why I feel Mumbai is not giving me the signs of being a very well-oiled unit. They may probably qualify for like the top three. I mean, for the knockouts and all of that, but then eventually they will be found out. If they don't have players regularly coming in and stepping up. But Nat Silverbrand, man, she is obviously like a class all-rounder. Has been doing so well for them consistently across 3 seasons, and she's obviously going to be a retention for them. मतलब उसको retain नहीं किया तो अब क्या ही बोले ना. So in that sense, yeah, Nat Silverbrand has been a consistent performer, and hope to kind of see her do well, and for others to kind of pick their way to pull their weight. Sorry.
Yeah, देखते हैं if they are able to pull their weight. And Money, meanwhile, going for the Tamil reference here, Tamil movie. Last 2 years, Gardner's been playing like Ambi, and this season she's like Onion. That's why she's high. I mean, she is the highest price player. Janani, ma'am, please explain Ambi and Onion. Money, I'll take offense to the fact that you think I don't know Onion. Of course, I do. I know Ambi. I know Onion. What's the third character? Remo, if I'm not wrong. I know all three of them. I've seen the movie, enjoyed it, but. Yeah, interesting movie reference that Money is gone for. But again, Ashley Gardner is no Ambi. She's always been Onion everywhere. It's just that यहाँ पे थोड़ा time लगा. That's all there. So yeah, and yeah, if she can win Gujarat Giants their first title, nothing like it. Wow, man, old monk, like look at you just completely exactly. I mean. Thank you for christening me and giving me a new name. It's Akshay, not Abhay. But can you bring Amish? I would. But the question you need to ask is, would Amish want to come here? If I'm not wrong, he's busy watching the Champions Trophy semi-final. So we will definitely try and bring him on. Hopefully, for the watch-alongs at RCB make it to the knockout stages, you will get to see him. Sort of be with us, banter, chat about RCB, and why does he think RCB will be able to make. You know what, Neha? You know what I'm going to say. So it's okay. It's okay. I'll probably just not say that in jinx it. But yeah. Last but not the least, of course, Tanuja Kanwar. Again, Neha, one of those domestic stars who's been doing really well for the Gujarat Giants this season.
Oh yes, I mean Tanuja Kanwar was, I think, one of the breakthrough stars from last season. So coming into this season, I had a lot of expectations from her. I think last game versus RCB as well, she picked up those 2 wickets, looked in good touch. But I think this match versus UP, we really saw her come into her own. The kind of wicket she got, right? Be it Grace Harris, Sophie Eccleston, or Chidden Henry, 3 crucial wickets. I know we were very tempted to consider even Kashmi got them, because she had like much more economical figures, but we eventually ended up zeroing in on Tanuja Kanwar for the kind of performance she put in with these crucial wickets. But again, I think she has been progressing really well from last season, making her India debut and all of that. Coming and doing well in WPL definitely augurs well for India. Again, the larger vision here is the home World Cup. So having your spinners, come good on a surface that is, that can prove to be tricky for spinners is definitely a great sign. But here also, I think due credit to Gujarat's batting, right? Had Beth Mooney's not come in, I think thoda defending a low total would have been difficult. Like Beth Mooney scored 50% of the runs that day, like single-handedly ho hi gaya tha. But Tanuja Kanwar's performance was really good, was pretty economical, and those 3 wickets definitely had to be the icing on the cake. Hope she can again, progress well through the rest of the season. And seeing her bowl in tandem with Priya Mishra is a sight to behold. I mean, Indian spinners doing well is always a great sign. And just hoping she goes well rest of the season too.
And she's a pretty handy batter, to be honest. Like, I don't rate her as highly as the Gujarat Giants management do, because I remember her then promoting her ahead of Bharti Fulmali and Simran Sheikh even. But she's a more than handy batter, so there's no reason why she cannot make a comeback to the Indian side this time around. She's been phenomenal with the ball, and she can also, sort of score a few runs, come up with those handy cameos lower down the order, or someone that the Indian team wouldn't mind at all. We also are looking for, left arm spinners. Radha Yadav hasn't been in the greatest of form. So maybe Tanuja Kanwar could be used or brought in as a potential replacement over there. So interesting. A lot of names that we've spoken about. We'll take up a couple of questions before we wrap this episode up. He's asking Abhay, not you. I mean, I get that. I hope there is an actual Abhay there. And it wasn't me he was referring to there. But of course, let's take up this a very interesting question. Do you think our domestic players' generally poor batting performances can be attributed to an overemphasis on hitting sixes instead of accumulating runs via singles, doubles, and fours without risk? Example knock. NSB scored 75 of 44 without hitting a single six against UP Warriors. Can't our domestic players follow this template? Janani, let's start with you. You did speak about NSB knock. What do you make of, Asim's observation that domestic players seem to be taking a lot more risk?
Fair points, both in terms of saying, hey, can't they accumulate with singles, doubles, and fours, and couldn't NSBs not be a template? But looking at the other side, we don't know the instructions that they've been given. Like, have they been given the blank check to go and tonk, or what, right? And also the second thing perhaps is to be able to. I mean, I'm not saying you can't manipulate the field without experience, but then I think it's also a habit where constantly you're strategizing in your head. You look at where the four fielders are in the outside, and then keep piercing, and that also comes with a bit of exposure and lot more match practice. So yeah, those were my 2 cents out there for that particular question.
Yeah, I mean, very valid. Neha, any thoughts on this?
Actually, guys, I do have a thought on this. Matlab, I was just looking at the scorecards of the senior women's T20 trophy, the Challenger trophy, and all of that. I can't think of a single match where the scores were actually like, collective team scores were like 150, 180, and all of that. I feel somewhere like in the domestic setup itself, I don't want to sound stupid or like at the risk of generalizing and all of that, but they're kind of not encouraged to, go for those big sixes. They're asked to play very conservatively and all of that. See the trend even in the senior women's one-day trophy and the subsequent Challenger trophy. I know, like, people will bring in the Vadodara surface, the Bengal Haryana Max 390 and all of that. But in general, you'll see, I think coaches asking the players to be very like conservative, play the slow game and all of that. Even Mithali Raj, right, for the longest time was criticized कि boss तुम ऐसे knocks क्यों खेल रहे हो, like it's not coming to use for the team. I think Nicole Bolton also spoke about it on a podcast. That became a whole thing, a whole controversy of itself. But I think what happens to a lot of these domestic players is they're used to playing this conservative brand of cricket. The moment they're thrust into the WPL setup, they're given the instruction to kind of go all out. I think which is a point that Asim also brought in here, that there is an emphasis to play those risky shots, and that's where they end up getting exposed and not being able to play that brand of cricket. Ragvi Bishka knock ho, yeah, Nikki Prasad. I think they were trying to be very careful, just take those singles and do this and that. But players like Kiran Navgire ho, yeah, Simran Sheikh and all of that, they just have so much pressure to just come and hit those big sixes. You're coming in with that reputation of being a power hitter and all of that. So maybe somewhere the communication itself is just getting lost. And I feel that's the reason why we see some of these players not being able to deliver. Like Jenny also, right? Like she did score a lot of centuries when she was playing for Mumbai, like age group cricket, domestic, and all of that. But it took her such a long time to adapt to international cricket and actually play that game. The kind of role she plays for Delhi, to play that same role for India took her a really long time. Bide your time, play a few quick singles, take those doubles. Just be very active at the crease, then take your chances and go for the fours. So somewhere I think that reinforcement at the domestic level has to come. Ki boss, be thoda calculative, be thoda strategic, and play that sort of a thing. I think the change in mindset has to start at the domestic level and then eventually spill on, to the WPL. But let me know, guys, if I'm generalizing here or what I said kind of made sense.
Makes sense.
I'm actually,
But
yeah. No.
I was just saying it. Go ahead. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but also it's the other thing about what are the instructions they're being given, because it's a totally different stage and you're rubbing shoulders with the internationals. So, what's the messaging that goes? Not too sure, right? Like we aren't aware of that.
Oops, apologies, I was on mute there. That is actually fair. In fact, I was just trying to pull out a few numbers. Let me just divide runs by balls, because I don't know if Indian batters are actually more aggressive than India than the overseas contingent. That's what I was trying to look at. And yeah, I mean, numbers suggest that overseas batters or rather, okay, I'll have to actually subtract a couple of numbers before I blurt it out. But Indian batters have a strike rate of 122 in the tournament, and the tournament has a strike rate of 134. So fair to say that overseas batters have a higher strike rate. इसीलिए tournament का strike rate Indian batters के strike rate से ऊपर है. So Asim, firstly, I don't think domestic batters, in general have that emphasis on hitting sixes. If anything, we've always been speaking about how Indian batters, there's this tendency to sort of get bogged down by the pressure, and they tend to sort of, take singles and doubles and all of that. But should there be an overemphasis, you can also see where they're coming from, because T20 as a format is fast evolving. So it is important that there is, a bit more emphasis being put on boundaries. In fact, we all remember that thread that we saw last week from Sarvesh, if I'm not wrong, something we brought up then as well, about boundary hitting and why it's different in women's cricket compared to men's. Field restrictions are different, boundary dimensions are different, and naturally the pace at which bowlers bowl is also different, because of which it's not the same. Like batters ke liye wahan pe the risk that they need to take between hitting a 4 and hitting a 6 isn't too different. It's almost the same amount of risk that male batters have to take. On the other hand, for female batters, it is a lot more easier to score a 4 compared to hitting a 6. So which is why you see, them generally relying on 4s and all of it. But you see power hitters coming in, so naturally there'll be a bit more emphasis on it. But again, there's still a lot more that we'll also have to sort of think about. I don't have an opinion on the face of it. I would still just like to make sure if numbers also back that, because मेरे को तो पर्सनली वही लगता है कि ओवर एम्फेसिस मैंने तो नहीं देखा. If anything, I want more over emphasis, मतलब more emphasis to be given on boundary hitting, because that's where I think we are slightly lacking compared to the other sides there. But anyways, let's just take a couple of comments before we wrap it up. Apologies for the delay. RCB, many players are young, so they're mostly a work in progress. Smithy has a lot on her plate. Maybe that's why they retained Divine, to give that experience and support. Now, Asha and Divine are out. Samit, I mean, अपने आप से RCB को defend करने का क्यों सोचा? Like, I don't think anyone said anything about these points, but interesting. Maybe a couple of months late, but sure, still a very valid observation nonetheless. Asim, meanwhile, also saying Simran Sheikh comes to mind. She was mindlessly going for sixes instead of rotating the strike when Bharti was the set player. Players like Simran Hemlata could play themselves into form. Asim, again, match situation, bowler, everything comes into play here. The game you're referring to, I know, this was the game that Gujarat lost. If I'm not wrong, this was against Delhi Capitals. It was a lost cause, so they were just going for it any which ways. So, they were just trying to see if they could make a few more runs and hit a couple of boundaries. And Simran made a name for herself by hitting those boundaries. So again, it's not something that can just be answered by a single statement by saying this or that. So it'll take a bit more from us as well, just to make sure that we are getting it right. But valid points nonetheless. And yeah, I'm guessing that's time for us to wrap this episode up. I know that the Champions Trophy semi-final is going on, so a lot of you will catch it later, and all of you folks catching it later or watching it live right now, please make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already. And once again, please do us a world of good. We floated around a Google form, a feedback form rather, that's in our description. We've also put it up here. Please go and fill it up. It'll take you no more than 2 minutes. We're just trying to understand what you guys like about it, dislike about it, how can we improve the viewer experience. And it'll be very, very, very helpful if you guys can fill it up right now. And that's that from this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, like I said earlier, please make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe to us if you haven't already. And in the meantime, let me search for the outro. There, I have the outro as well. Thank you so much once again. And let's have a blast come Friday when that watch long comes in. It'll be Gujarat taking on Delhi Capitals. Neha, Dia, and I will be there, and we will be rooting for Gujarat Giants. Make no mistake. And then the RCB on Saturday. Until then, it's a goodbye from us. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, folks.